The multiplication of two matrices A and B is defined as follows. So let's consider two matrices, A with m rows and n columns, and B with n rows and p columns. Then, to find one entry of the product matrix, we need to multiply the corresponding entries in a row and a column, and finally add the products. Now, this formula may seem complicated at first, so let's work through an example to see how it works. Here I have an example of two matrices, and we're going to multiply them. The first thing that we have to do is to check the dimensions of both matrices. So in the case of the matrix A, we have a dimension of 3 times 2, and B has dimensions of 2 by 3. Since the number of columns of A is equal to the number of rows of B, we can perform the matrix multiplication of these two. Now, the result should be a 3 by 3 matrix, and we are going to find each one of those entries as follows. First of all, let's consider the first row of matrix A and the first column of the matrix B. Then we multiply 3 times -2, and we add -2 times 4. Then consider the second row. Then we multiply 2 times -2, and we add 4 times 4. Finally, we consider the third row. That will be now 1 times -2, and we add -3 times 4. We simplify to obtain these values. The next step is to consider in matrix B the second column, and we start from matrix A with the first row. So we have 3 times 1 plus -2 times 1. Then the next step is to move to the second row in matrix A. Now we have 2 times 1 plus 4 times 1. Then we consider the third row. That will be 1 times 1 plus -3 times 1. We simplify to obtain the values, and then we move to the third column in the matrix B, and we start again with matrix A, the first row. So we have 3 times 3 plus -2 times 6. Then second row is 2 times 3 plus 4 times 6. Then the last row is 1 times 3 plus -3 times 6. We simplify to obtain the result.